Listen to me. I'm only going to say this once. We are going on the trip now. It's going to be rough. It's going to feel like it's going on for a long time, so it's going to be hard to stay alert. It's going to be even harder to be quiet, but you have to do both. You have to do every single thing I say, or we will not make it. Understand? Under no circumstance are you allowed to take off your blindfold. If I find that you have, I will hurt you. Do you understand? You must listen as closely as you can. If you hear something in the woods, you tell me. If you hear something in the water, you tell me. But you never, ever take off your blindfold. If you look, you will die. Do you understand?
On this episode of Technicolor Blood, we are going to discuss Bird Box, and I think this will be fun because I don't think we agree on this one.
Those are always the best discussions.
Here we go. Technicolor Blood starts right now. All right, Bird Box. So, we watched this independently in the last week. Mm-hmm. Big Netflix movie directed by Suzanne Bier, Danish filmmaker. This was touted as the most watched Netflix original movie, at least for the first week or whatever it was. I think they said it was something like 45 million.
Yeah, 45 million views in just the first 5 days, I think.
Yeah, and they don't tout those numbers often. No. So the fact that they did tout this one sort of as a kind of an impressive and I guess a notable thing to bring up. And
at least on my social media, this film blew up.
Yeah, there are several memes associated with this. Yeah. They're ongoing. Now, apparently, Netflix has had to tell people to stop doing the Bird Box challenge. I don't know if you've seen this or not, but
I have, yes.
Yeah, so I don't know if you carved out any time for this episode to talk about that, but
we definitely need to talk about it because I was disappointed in the Bird Box challenge.
Okay, yes, the level of effort. It wasn't. The thing that this reminded me of was that I actually never saw this movie way back when called The Program. It was that like college football movie that had people laying in the street.
I do remember that movie. I did watch it.
Pre-social media.
Yeah. Before we jump away from that,
sure.
I just want to explain. So The Program was a movie about a college football team, and in it there was a scene where, as kind of like a dare challenge / razzing of like the new players on it, the students in this small town college football program would go out to a busy street late at night, and they would all lie down on the lines between the lanes. And in the darkness, the cars racing by couldn't really see that there were people there. And it was just like a challenge to show how brave you were. Well, Then real football teams started trying to do this challenge. And the producers of the film, or the studio, I should say, actually had to go as far as to cut that scene out of the movie. They said, please don't do this. And then they cut it out of the movie and released new prints of it to theaters with that scene absent from it.
Mm-hmm. That's The Program. This is Bird Box. And I just can only assume that the meme is people blindfolding themselves and seeing how far they get before they horribly injure themselves, fall down the stairs,
right? So
kill their children. I don't know.
Here's my complaint. I didn't know about the Bird Box challenge. Well, I didn't know the details of the Bird Box challenge till after I'd seen the movie, but I had heard of the Bird Box challenge before seeing the movie. Mm-hmm. So going into the movie, I was like, okay, something happens in this movie that dumb people are like, we should do this.
Yep.
And what I thought it was there's a sequence in the movie where people try to drive a car with the windows blocked out using only GPS. And I was like, oh, well, that is an insanely dangerous challenge. They really should not be doing that. Then afterwards, I found out the Bird Box challenge is simply putting blindfolds on your kids and running around your house.
Yeah.
And that was hugely disappointing to me. I don't care if your kids run into walls. I just don't want you trying to drive a car in traffic with me using GPS.
So you're disappointed that it wasn't people driving blind?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay,
I see no risk of anyone dying in the current version of the Bird Box Challenge, whereas people could die in my version of the Bird Box Challenge. I'm just saying they're both bad, but mine's better.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, for me, the Bird Box challenge was watching Bird Box. I'm just going to get that out of the way. So, spoilers abound in this review. And I don't know, where do you want to start? I think you maybe liked it more than I did.
Yeah. So my review of this movie would be simply this. It's an enjoyable thriller. Like, I didn't love it. And you can't really think about it too hard because it all just quickly falls apart. But, you know, I thought it was competently made. I thought the premise was like a cool twist on essentially the old zombie premise. They were like, you know, hey, let's make a zombie movie, but just never show any zombies. And so that's the movie that you end up watching. I mean, it uses a bunch of the zombie tropes. I'm a zombie fan, so I kind of liked that. I kind of got a kick out of it.
Yeah, a little bit of zombie, a little bit of A Quiet Place, a little bit of The Happening.
Yeah,
There's a lot of those things, and at least one of those is not a good thing. The Happening was not a good movie.
No, The Happening was the movie that broke me, and I just gave up on M. Night Shyamalan at that point. I'm like, I'm done with you, and I've never gone back.
Oh, we're going to do an M. Night Shyamalan episode.
Well, my half will be short.
The Glass is coming up soon. Anyway, Bird Box. So, yeah, this is about a world where there's been something that happened where there's a creature of some kind, and when people see it, they want to kill themselves. So you have to keep yourself blindfolded at all times.
A la The Happening.
A la The Happening. So instead of having to be super quiet, you can't see anything. So it's sort of similar to A Quiet Place. It is based on a book, so it's not like they just ripped this completely from you know, what was going on in pop culture at the time.
But I suspect the success of A Quiet Place led to this movie being greenlit.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, they landed Sandra Bullock. You know, Oscar Award winner, and she's fine in it. You know,
she also produced it.
I like Sandra Bullock, so no complaints there. I just felt like this movie from the beginning was so derivative in every way, and there was nothing surprising that happened in it. It seemed like every big plot point was not necessarily telegraphed, but it just all seemed very predictable to me. I wanted to like it. You know, I definitely wanted to like it. It was a little bit tough for me to suspend disbelief on sort of the long distances traveled blindfolded, the driving, the navigating a river, and getting completely turned around and knowing where the hell you're going. Man, I know that for all movies, really, even dramas, you sometimes have to just suspend disbelief. But when you get a supernatural element in there, sure, I'm happy to do it. But man, there was just a lot of reaches in this movie for me. And it really started becoming sort of unenjoyable for me in the scene where I guess they're all holed up in a house, and the guy shows up and he's trying to get in the house and he's trying to convince them that there's these people chasing him. And you know from the beginning that he is the guy that he's describing who's going to come in and kill all of them. And I was just waiting for something a little bit more unexpected to happen along the way. And it just fell into so many tropes for me. Yeah,
I get that totally. There really is nothing original at any point anywhere in that film. But like I said, you know, at this point, I've seen the zombie movie formula so many times that I've just accepted that I'm going to have to re-see several of these scenes and tropes again and again. You just have to, 50% of every zombie movie you've already seen in another zombie movie. Sure. And, you know, this falls into that same problem, but it was done with enough flair and with enough conviction from the cast that I was able to sort of weather that sort of thing and just enjoy the ride.
I definitely was intrigued at the beginning of the movie where the Sandra Bullock character is explaining to the kids, you know, you need to listen to me or you're going to die. She's basically just being a total bitch to them. And it takes you, it makes you kind of step back a little bit.
That speech that she gives to the kids at the very beginning of the movie is the speech that every parent should give before a road trip with their children.
That's fair. Oh, I'm sort of seeing the allegory now.
If you make a noise, I will have to hurt you.
Yeah, and just blindfold your kids. That's probably for the best as well. That's a good way to keep them quiet. I guess kind of we do that by giving them iPads, right? We just give them something to look at the entire time.
Yes.
It's a metaphor.
That's true.
I'm reaching here. I'm really reaching. So yeah, I thought Sandra Bullock was fine. I thought a lot of the peripheral actors were not so good. John Malkovich kind of got to go crazy a little bit in this movie. He's such a unusual actor to me.
He's real hit or miss.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who I don't know that he's playing himself in every movie, but he's sort of playing that like crazy-eyed, loud-talking lunatic that's just sort of under the surface, and in this one, not so much under the surface.
Yeah, I actually liked the use of him here. It was enough that you got the good John Malkovich, but not so much that you got too much of John Malkovich.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like he, in a way, was me, the viewer, as specifically me.
Yeah.
Because I'm watching the movie and I'm watching how events unfold, and I'm trying to put my brain into what these characters already know about the world as it exists then. And the fact that he's flipping out about them letting a stranger in, yeah, that is the correct way to handle that situation.
He's never actually wrong.
Right, exactly. Yeah, he's a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
But you kind of have to be in that situation. And the ones like the mother of the little girl that Sandra Bullock takes on, the kind people, the people who are like real people that we know in real life, those people are not going to make it in that world.
Yeah. I liked her character a lot because you don't see that represented?
Sure, let's go with it.
Represented.
You have the best words.
In zombie movies very often. You know, in zombie movies, you either have the inexplicably badass people or, you know, the victims, the people who die. You don't often have just like the normal person who tries really hard but is basically useless.
Yeah.
You know, so
they mean well.
Yeah. Like I kind of liked seeing that kind of a character represented in a movie this way.
Yeah, you don't see that often at all. You're right about that. And I got to hand it to them because they definitely captured something truly terrifying, which is, I mean, if you went outside right now with a blindfold and walked around, it would be terrifying. Right now, it would just be scary because you're so not used to it. Now you put that in the context of what's going on in this movie, and yeah, that is a super scary thing. So that part to me, like they had a great amount of manufactured tension in that movie, which anytime they needed it, I mean, you didn't have to work for that at all. When you're in the house, you have the doors and the windows shuttered. You have them painted over or you know, covered with coverings, and you're scared of what's outside. You go outside, you're wearing a blindfold. You have no idea what's going on there. They did a good job of using sort of the ambient sound to whip you up into a frenzy as to what's coming. When you know bad things are going to happen in this movie, you know, you're going to have the old like people are getting killed off one by one, and someone's going to sacrifice themselves to save someone else. And I mean, just they kind of hit all those tropes, but they definitely did a great job of holding the tension. Like I didn't hate it so much that I was just like completely out on it, because the entire movie, I definitely felt the tension of that.
Yeah. Yeah. They also do another good thing that I like, which is they don't make any effort at all to explain what has led to this, what caused this, what's really going on even. You know, it's kind of spoiled because the synopsis of the movie tips your hat before you even start it. So early on, there's like a little lip service paid to the idea that it's like some sort of viral contagion or, you know, some sort of government thing or whatever. But if you know the synopsis, like you instantly know, well, it's none of those things. So it's you know, it's okay. It's a courtesy that dialogue is in there, but it's unimportant. But they also don't take it the other direction. You know, they never reveal anything about it. Right. They never give you any explanation. And in fact, though it's heavily implied that there is a creature involved, that's never in any way confirmed in the film.
Right.
It's entirely possible that the entire film, all of the events are happening completely inside people's heads, and that there really is no outside force or influence causing any of this to happen.
I think in a way it might have worked better if they'd focused more on that.
You mean focused on that mystery or on actually having an outside force?
On the fact that they leave it a little bit more ambiguous as to whether or not there was something that was actually causing this to happen. I think it might have benefited from that. I'm not sure. I'm sort of reaching for something that would have improved the movie for me a little bit.
Well, let me throw this out there. The original script called for there to be a monster that was causing this. And in fact, they even created a creature design. You can go online to see it. The effects company that created it released photos of the creature design and of the stunt person wearing the costume. Yeah. And the story behind it is that in the scene where that gets revealed, Sandra Bullock told him, I don't want to see it ahead of time. Like, I want my reaction to be the real reaction. Right. So just, I'll turn around and I'll see the monster for the first time. She turned around and she just burst out laughing.
Yeah.
And
I didn't know if you knew about that or not, but that was going to be my next thing. They actually shot it.
Yeah.
They actually shot the monster, and Sandra Bullock had a very comical reaction to it.
Yeah. So that scene is absent, and without that scene, you never, like, there's nothing in the movie that you can actually nail down as proof that there's a monster at all.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I like the most about it.
Yeah. Before I forget, I want to go back to one point that I thought was a positive, which is the idea of how they left it sort of hanging in the air about what actually was going on. They, like you said, they entertained the idea of it being some sort of viral contagion, threw a couple of things out there. And the reason I like that is because it feels like that's how it would be in the real world. If that actually happened and communications broke down, there's obviously not going to be social media. There's going to be really no way for people to communicate unless they get a network of, I don't know, walkie-talkies out there, or they're listening to the radio, blah, blah, blah. All those ways in movies where people in an apocalyptic film manage to communicate.
Yeah.
That's how it would be. There would be rumors. There would be like, I heard this thing. And of course that would get blown up and turn into something that maybe wasn't. So I felt that was pretty effectively done because it felt kind of realistic to me.
Yes.
I also was glad. Now, I didn't know ahead of time that they had shot the stuff with the monster. I didn't know ahead of time that they didn't reveal the monster.
Yeah, I didn't either.
So I do think that was a good choice. It's a little strange to me though that they put all this money into it and their plan was to show the monster, and the decision was made just not to show it instead of them doing something else.
Yeah.
Getting a different costume design.
Right.
So that's kind of strange to me. I don't know if it was like a budget issue or if they were all sitting around creatively and they just said, you know what, it actually would work if we just didn't show it at all and we left it implied.
Yeah, I would love to know the answer to that too, because you can tell from watching it that it does not have a large budget,
right?
But it also stars Sandra Bullock, so it's got enough money for a monster if they want one.
Yeah, and I can't imagine that just redoing a monster for. It's clear that they were never planning on showing it several times.
Right.
So it doesn't seem like it would be a big budget hit for them to just redo the monster.
Yeah.
So I feel
in
like
today's CG world,
Yeah. So I feel like maybe they were taking a lesson from, the Spielbergs of the world who said that he wished he would have shown the shark less in Jaws.
Yeah.
And I think over the years, like, filmmakers have gotten a little bit better about that, about instead of giving the audience what they want constantly. I think we talked about that recently on an episode. Like, I like it when I have a question and I really want it answered. And I sometimes, depending on the question, I don't get the answer. And I like that.
Yeah.
You have that ambiguity to it. And they did do a good job with that by not showing the monster, by not telling us what caused everything. So in that respect, I did enjoy the movie for that. It could have done a lot better to eliminate some of the tropes. I'm not even asking for all of them because, like you said, you've seen one zombie movie, you've seen them all in a way.
Yeah,
you always have to hit those notes. And like you said, this one had a lot of them. I just felt like there could have been a lot fewer of them. And I really did not care for the ending at all. The ending just felt so slapped on and tied up.
Yeah. I agree. It does have a very convenient ending, and I don't know how they could have made it better, but something else would have been nice.
Yeah, I mean, you have her making the decision in the raft to not have either child look, which I was a little bit confused during. They go through this whole thing about, okay, someone has to look. So there's the threat of that happening, but just because you look doesn't mean that you're going to see the creature. So I'm also confused about, like you said, there's this possibility that they sort of, the final version of the movie kind of seemed like there's a possibility that maybe there was nothing there and it was all in their heads, because why would this thing be ever present for everyone to see all the time? Are there bazillions of them? Is there one? It's just, it's some sort of a creature that's in everyone's head, but it manifests itself and they can see it. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. I mean, so much of it is just vague and undefined.
Yeah. And I like that, but I also feel like it sort of is like a pillar of the story that just has been knocked out from under the table. You know what I mean? Like a table leg has been taken out. That just doesn't really, like, there's ambiguity, and there's also, this doesn't really make sense to me, and I need it to make a little bit more sense.
Yeah, see, so I guess that's probably the key point that we differ on is the more ambiguous it was, the more I enjoyed it. Like, I enjoy the fact that there are people who can see the monster and they don't kill themselves. You know, that whether they're already psychopaths or whether seeing them turns them into psychopaths, that's also left vague. I enjoyed all of that. You know, I enjoyed the mystery of what was going on there. And the fact that there was no character who was kind of feeding the audience the answers as the movie went along.
Yeah.
Like, they introduced the concept of a character to do that. Like, he's the one that plants the idea in your mind that there are monsters and that they've always existed and all this other stuff. But he's killed off pretty early, and the absence of an actual monster suggests that nothing he was saying is actually accurate to this particular film.
Yeah, they have that scene where he's spreading out all his drawings on the table, and there's the character that shows up at the house.
Yeah, I actually wasn't talking about that character.
Oh, okay.
I was talking about the guy, the novelist who's, you know, works at the supermarket, who's writing the book, and like at the beginning he tells people that, like, you know, they're, you know, the Bible and all these other, you know, religious texts throughout history have talked about these creatures that could do this thing, blah, 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 blah. I would have preferred actually if his dialogue had just been zombies. Because, you know, the movie starts off like any zombie movie, so we live in a world where people know about zombie movies.
Right.
Which has been nice if he would have been like, it's the zombie apocalypse. I've been watching Walking Dead. This is exactly how it happens.
Right.
But yeah, your point is also valid. There is the guy who shows up with sketches of what you're, I guess, supposed to believe could be the monster, or iterations of the monster, because it's a pretty wide gamut of designs.
Yeah, that's what sort of intrigues me. Like, now that we're actually getting into this and talking about it, it sort of intrigues me that they use that character to sort of put it in people's heads that, oh yeah, there's definitely a physical monster, because he's spreading out all these drawings, but you never actually see it. And like you said, there's different iterations of it. So it's interesting to me that let's just call it the threat, whatever the threat is, has apparently infected. I don't know if they ever talked about population numbers. I guess they wouldn't know. But there's a certain amount of people that see, quote unquote, the monster and they want to kill themselves. And there's other ones that see the monster and want to help others kill themselves. Like they've set it up so that they have both sides working for them. And part of his insanity is he's got all these visions in his head and he's drawing up all these monsters. And, you know, I don't know, maybe that's like sort of part of his deal is his campaign to show others, oh, this is beautiful. Like, he kept saying that it's beautiful. You need to see this.
Yes.
Shows them the character in his head that comes from that to further, like, sort of the threat's story that may or may not actually be true.
Yeah, which was one of the points that I really liked, right? Like, his character is introduced where he's telling them that, yes, there are people who can, he's confiding in them that there are people who can look at the monsters, not kill themselves. But then he goes on to say those people come from this mental hospital, right? So he's trying to plan in their mind that these people are already deranged in some way, and that's what gives them this ability. We never get confirmation of that. We only have that notion because this guy who's lying to get access to the house has told them this story. So at the end, you're like, you know, look, like you just articulated, you know, is this segment of the population that's allowed to see the monster and survive, were they already damaged people in some way, psychotic or, you know, mentally diseased or whatever? Or did seeing the monster turn them that way, but not all the way to where they're killing themselves? They just want to kill other people. And that vagary was intriguing to me, you know?
I just feel like where it falls apart that it could be no monster at all is that scene. The main male character, Trevante Rhodes, played by Trevante Rhodes, who was sort of romantically involved with Sandra Bullock in the movie.
Tom, I think was his character name.
Tom, there you go. Yeah. When he dies, you know, he clearly has a physical reaction to something. He sees something. You see his eyes change color, or something happens with the eyes.
Yes.
So something physical clearly happened there. And that's where I just, like I said, I like the ambiguity, but I just feel like they didn't do enough. It's like they didn't do enough to explain to me why this could happen to you at any place at any time. And I'm okay with not knowing the final answer to that, because to me, feeding back into The Happening. You know, with The Happening, it was this whole thing about climate change, and it's the trees and the plants, and it's like this. It's almost like an invisible cloud that's pushing through the area. So, and I think a lot of times in the movie, whenever the threat would show up, it was accompanied by, you know, a flock of birds,
leaves, like wind would blow, and then you'd
yeah.
see leaves rattling.
Okay, I guess it was leaves then.
Yeah.
So there was always something that sort of, you know, introduced the threat each time it showed up, even though we never really saw it. But he had that physical reaction. So I'm very curious, but I guess I'm okay in the end with not actually having it spoon-fed to me. I think I might have a better reaction to the ambiguity of it and being comfortable with this being whatever it was, had I never read that they actually shot the monster.
Right. Yeah.
And they actually had intended to put that in the movie.
Yeah.
So had I not had that knowledge, then it would make a lot more sense to me. But that sort of like takes me down a path that I can't quite step off of.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely. Like, not having that knowledge makes the movie better.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, that would have been. So I'm curious what happens in the book. I know that I read several notes that said that they definitely changed the ending from what was in the book. Curious to see what that is. I hope it wasn't a change that just basically allowed them the chance to do a sequel at some point.
Yeah.
But I kind of have a feeling that I might be something like that.
Right.
Because another movie that I thought of towards the end was The Mist. Do you remember The Mist? Thomas Jane, based on a Stephen King.
I remember seeing the movie, and I remember the last shot of the movie. That is terrible, but I don't remember the rest of the movie.
Yeah. People I know love that movie. I thought it was terrible. But at the end of The Mist, Thomas Jane is in the mist, and he is about to die, and the two kids in the back are about to die, and Thomas Jane, the father character, spoilers for The Mist, turns around and shoots his two kids in the face to spare them from whatever was going to happen. And then the threat is immediately lifted, if I recall correctly. Like he didn't have to do that.
Yeah. It's a terrible ending. Yeah. It's a nonsensical.
Shocking, but terrible.
Yeah. Shock value, but makes no intrinsic logical sense to the story.
And also Thomas Jane. Anyway, so I started thinking of that movie as well, like towards the end where they were in the raft and she makes the decision she's not going to have either kid look. Oh, God. Yeah. So I started having visions of The Mist and these kids like dying and drowning or whatever, and then they reach their destination and she didn't have to do that. So they didn't do that. I'm really curious in the book if because there was which I thought was a pretty effective scene where leading up to where she makes the decision not to have either kid look, where there's that sort of obvious note where I'm not going to have my kid look. It's going to be this other kid. And I actually thought that little girl who played the daughter of the woman who died early in the movie did a pretty damn good job of articulating her feelings, which was, I know you're going to pick me because you know, I'm not your kid. Yeah. I mean, she's too young of an actress to be able to convey that, but I thought she did a pretty good job.
Yeah. I thought she did a great job.
So yeah, that whole ending and then like them finding the community, man, that just seemed real tight and wrapped up for a movie that basically was ruthless up to that point with characters.
Yeah. A big turning point in the film for me was, they do this sort of flashback thing where you've got the one storyline which takes place currently, which is her with the two kids trying to get down the river, trying to get to some sort of sanctuary. And then the rest of the film, which is actually the majority of the film, is simply flashbacks to her getting to the point where she's alone trying to save these two kids. And as I'm watching her stumbling around with the kids and the blindfold and everything, I'm just like, I'm still thinking there's a monster that is the cause of all of this. And in my head, I'm just like, just take the blindfold off, right? Because like if the monster is there, then you're going to see it and you're going to kill yourself. Or if you're wearing the blindfold, then you won't see it, but the monster will just kill you anyway. And I'm like, so just take the blindfold off because it's just random chance whether or not you're going to run into the monster or not. And if you're not, you have a much better chance of covering more ground and getting away if you're not wearing the damn blindfold. But as the movie goes on, I started to realize there might not be a monster at all. Like the only way you die is by seeing this thing. Yeah. As long as you keep the blindfold on, nothing can hurt you. You become impervious to any sort of danger. Yeah. And that's when I became intrigued by the movie. I was like, wait a minute, if there's no monster at all, and all of this is happening for whatever the cause is, like a viral contagion or whatever, but if basically everything is just happening inside their heads, then it becomes a much more, just a much more impressive feat that they're going to be able to carry this concept all the way to completion at the end of the movie.
So obviously they left it open to another.
Yes.
Would you be interested in seeing the sequel?
I would especially be interested in seeing the sequel if it turns out that they're just like, we left the monster out, so let's just not make there be any sort of monster at all. Mm-hmm. Let's take it in a completely different and fresh direction. I would be intrigued by that.
Yeah,
But I want to say I don't need a sequel to this at all. Just like with A Quiet Place, I don't need a sequel to that.
Right.
And in fact, in the case of A Quiet Place, which is a much, much better film, I think a sequel ultimately hurts that film. In this movie, it's not really that great. So if they make a sequel, if it's better, hooray. If it's worse, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough for me to imagine them carrying that concept off for another movie. But like we talked about, God, The Walking Dead is 8-9 seasons in.
Yep.
You can always come up with something. The thing you always lose with that second movie is you lose the interest in the originality of the story. Like, okay, I've seen this, and we know the world's been established, the characters have been established. So then what happens in the next movie, the plot, the writing has to be so good to overcome the loss of how excited you were and surprised you were or intrigued you were by the original concept.
Right.
Which, I think is what, all sequels, that's why it's so hard for them to be better, because you just don't have that newness to it.
Yes, absolutely. You've got to accomplish two goals. You have to actually continue the original story, because fans don't like it if you just drop it and start something completely new. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you have to bring a next level to it.
Sure.
And that's just a real hard combination for anyone to pull off.
Yep.
But I think the success of this movie virtually guarantees that we're going to see them try.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay, well, we always try to put a grade on these when we do a standalone episode about a movie. I will come in, I'll give it a C+.
Yeah, honestly, I think I'd probably give it a C+ as well.
Okay.
Since we came in with me liking it more than you, I feel like I should bump it up to a B-.
Well, I think when we got into talking more about the sort of more metaphorical aspects of the movie and the idea that there wasn't a monster and how they played with that a little bit, like I guess I appreciate what they were trying to accomplish a little bit more. So I think my grade probably rose up a little bit.
Okay.
From where it was coming in.
All right. So that sounds fair.
All right. So, well, we really like doing these standalone episodes. With the new year, I'm sure we'll have plenty more. Tons and tons of movies coming up for us to discuss. So we'll do this again pretty soon, hopefully. And we will see you on the next one. You can hit us up on Twitter @TechBloodPod. Tell us what you thought of Bird Box.
Yeah, definitely do that. I'd be curious to hear more people's input.
Show us your Bird Box challenge. We are blindfolded right now. And
I always record every podcast blindfolded.
You haven't heard any bumps or me drinking water like you probably usually do, because I'm too scared to do it. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one. Appreciate you listening, and talk to you soon.